Felicia didn't flinch when the email arrived. She had learned long ago that the moments that truly mattered, the moments that could kill you, arrived without warning, without ceremony. There was no subject line, no greeting, no hint of civility, just a scanned photo attached. Her old apartment door, taken from the hallway, taken recently. She closed the laptop slowly, deliberately, letting the soft click of the hinge echo in the near-empty cafe. The smell of strong coffee and buttery pastries surrounded her, yet it did nothing to ground her. She looked around. Noon crowd. Noise. Safety theater. Strangers laughing, clinking cups. Their oblivion was her camouflage. 2 years ago, fear would have made her panic. Her hands would have trembled, her chest would have pounded, and she would have left chaos in her wake. But 2 years of running, of planning, of surviving had taught her precision. Fear could still make her heart hammer, but now it made her careful, exact, a predator herself in a world full of them. She packed her bag with methodical calm, folding her jacket over her arm, slipping the laptop into a compartment she knew well. She left cash on the table, deliberately leaving no trace of the route she would take. Then she walked out without rushing, step by step, like she owned the street. Even if in reality, every step was calculated, every corner she turned was pre-checked in her mind, every alley accounted for. By the time her phone vibrated in her coat pocket, she was already moving. Unknown number. You're harder to find than I expected. She deleted it immediately, her thumb pressing with deliberate force. There would be no digital breadcrumb trail tonight. The second message came immediately after. She ignored it. Not impossible, she thought. Impossible had a different meaning now. Impossible would be a locked building, a guard with a gun. Impossible would be the wrong city, the wrong neighborhood, a man with nothing to lose and no patience. This was manageable, calculable, dangerous, yes, but not fatal. Felicia didn't respond. Not yet. She changed direction, cutting through a hotel lobby, the soft carpets muffling her footsteps. The receptionist glanced up, but did not see her as a threat, and that was fine. The security cameras here might notice her, but she had already accounted for them. She exited through a side door and flagged a cab in the street. Only when she was inside did she allow herself a shallow exhale, the kind that barely disturbed her composure. The hum of the city outside pressed against the cab windows, neon lights flickering in puddles, umbrellas in motion, the indistinct chaos of Manhattan at noon. That pressurized chaos was her friend now. Then she noticed the car. Black, unmarked, too patient. The reflection in the rear view caught her, eye before the driver said a word. They weren't following carelessly. They were following precisely. She didn't panic. She didn't stare. She observed, cataloged, absorbed. Her phone rang. This time, the number wasn't hidden. She answered, her voice calm, masking the tension in her grip on the device. Felicia, the man said. Calm, measured, not rushed. You noticed the wrong thing. Her grip tightened. She kept her eyes on the road ahead. Who is this? A man who's been watching you, he said, voice low, confident, deliberate. And another man who has been watching him. The cab stopped at a red light. The black car stopped behind them, engine idling, shadows pooling in its tinted windows. You can hang up, the man continued. But then you're choosing the other one. Felicia closed her eyes, weighing options. Her fingers pressed against her bag strap, knuckles white. She had run from men like this before. She knew their type, and yet she could feel something in his voice, something structured, measured, almost honest. Dangerous, yes, but reliable. Not a random predator. Where are you taking me? She asked, keeping her tone neutral. Somewhere public, he replied, and somewhere controlled. She exhaled, small and deliberate. You're a criminal. Yes. And you want something? Yes. What happens if I say no? A pause. Not long. Just honest. Then I leave, he said, and you deal with him alone. The light turned green. The cab rolled forward. Felicia made her decision. Tell me your name. Kong. Her mind went through the possibilities. Kong could be anyone. A hired muscle. A vigilante with resources. A shadow from her past. She didn't answer. Instead, she watched the road and counted the seconds until the next light, mentally scanning every possible escape route, noting every cross street, every alley. The black car stayed behind, patient, precise. It never swerved. It never honked. It was a shadow, a constant pressure against the periphery of her vision. She kept her breathing steady, controlled. She had trained for this. Years of survival had prepared her for this. "Kong," she finally said. "Why me?" Silence. Then, "Because you're about to be very visible, and someone else wants you gone." She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She merely nodded, understanding the unspoken rules of this game. Visibility meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant risk. Risk meant choices. She was ready to choose. The cab turned into a side street, away from the main flow of traffic. The black car followed. Kang's voice continued over the line, calm, guiding, patient. "You'll need to trust me for the next hour," he said. "After that, you can choose your own path." Her mind calculated probabilities. 1 hour. 1 hour to stay alive. 1 hour to assess if this man was a threat or her only shield. "I trust you," she said finally. For now. The streetlights reflected off the rain-slick pavement. Felicia glanced in the rear view. The black car mirrored every turn, every hesitation, every decision. She felt the tiniest flicker of relief, controlled, cautious, but relief nonetheless. And so it began. The hunt, the protection, the game that she had unknowingly stepped into. Felicia didn't flinch. Not yet. But every instinct, every sense screamed that this hour, this cab ride, this man named Kong, would change everything. Kong didn't hide her. That was the first thing Felicia noticed, and it unsettled her more than locked doors ever would have. No guardia corrida. No men stationed outside with earpieces and blank expressions. No instructions about where she could or couldn't go. When she was brought into the building, she walked in through the front entrance, past the concierge who greeted Kong by name and nodded to her as if she belonged there. That frightened her, because it meant Kong wasn't afraid of being seen. The conference room sat high above the city, all glass and steel, the kind of space designed to signal legitimacy. A long table, leather chairs, a muted skyline stretching endlessly beyond the windows. This was not a safe house. This was an office, a place where decisions were made without raised voices or visible weapons. Her phone was still in her bag, untouched, powered on. She noticed that too. Kong stood near the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled just enough to suggest comfort rather than relaxation. He didn't pace. He didn't watch her constantly. He looked out over the city as if it were a ledger already balanced. "You accessed a financial mirror," he said, without preamble. Felicia didn't answer immediately. She moved toward the table, placed her bag down, sat, but not in the chair closest to him. Distance mattered. Angles mattered. She had learned that the hard way. "I didn't know that's what it was," she said finally. "I know," Kong replied. Not dismissive, not reassuring, just factual. "You flagged an internal redundancy system," he continued. "One designed to reflect transactions without storing origin points. You thought it was an accounting error." "It was mislabeled," Felicia said, deliberately. "Yes." She crossed her arms. A defensive posture, but also a stabilizing one. She needed her body to stay steady, even if her thoughts were racing. "So now I'm leverage." Kong turned from the window then, slow and unhurried. He looked at her directly, measuring not fear, but resistance. "No," he corrected. "You're a variable." The word landed differently than she expected. "I don't belong to you," Felicia said. "I know," he replied immediately. There was no challenge in his voice. No one is chupin plaive. That was the difference, and she felt it in her chest like a quiet recalibration. He moved to the table and activated a screen embedded in its surface. No dramatic gestures, just a tap. The room came alive with data. He didn't show her violence. That, too, was deliberate. Instead, he showed her structure. Shell companies layered so deep they looked legitimate on first, second, even third pass. Charities that existed less to give than to rout. Political donations that moved sideways instead of upward, spreading influence thin enough to be invisible, wide enough to matter. "This is what power looks like when it wants to survive," Kong said. Felicia leaned forward despite herself. She hated that she understood it. hated that it made sense. And Darnell? She asked. Kong switched the screen. Darnell's name appeared far too often. Too exposed. Too linear. He isn't powerful, Kong said. He's ambitious. And sloppy. He's been stalking me for months. Yes. You knew. Yes. Her jaw tightened. And you let happen. I watched, Kong corrected. There's a difference. She stood abruptly. The chair scraped softly against the floor, loud in the quiet room. He sent photos. Messages. He followed me home. And he escalated when he realized you weren't reacting, Kong said. That's how men like him operate. They mistake silence for weakness. Felicia stopped pacing and faced him fully. He thinks pressure equals control, Kong continued. It doesn't. It creates witnesses, records, patterns. You could erase him, she said. The words were out before she could stop them. Yes, Kong agreed. No hosetashin. No moral speech. But you won't. He held her gaze. Because then you become afraid of me, he said. And fear is unreliable. That was the moment she truly saw him. Not as a protector, not as a threat, but as something colder and more disciplined. Fear made people obedient, but it also made them unpredictable. It made them lie, flee, sabotage. Kong didn't want obedience. He wanted alignment. So what do you want? Felicia asked. Your cooperation, he said. And your consent. For what? To expose him correctly. She let out a short breath, sharp with disbelief. I don't trust you. I don't need trust, Kong replied. I need clarity. He reached into his jacket and removed a phone. Not new, not flashy. He slid it across the table toward her. Everything I do from this point forward is recorded, he said. Calls, orders, transactions related to this situation. She stared at the phone, but didn't touch it. If I cross a line, Kong continued, you leave with proof. That would destroy you. Yes. Her fingers hovered over the device. Why give me that power? Because I won't act unless you understand exactly what I'm doing, he said. And because consent under ignorance is not consent. She picked up the phone. It was already unlocked. Files neatly labeled. Dates. Names. Internal communications that would take years for law enforcement to untangle. This wasn't a bluff. This was leverage handed to her willingly. That was the moment the balance shifted. Not to equal, but closer. And for the first time since the email arrived, Felicia didn't feel hunted. She felt positioned. Darnell made his move 48 hours later. Felicia felt it before Kong said anything. The air in the conference room changed. Phones started vibrating on the table, one after another, like a quiet warning system coming alive. Kong was standing near the window again, jacket off, sleeves rolled, watching the city as if he could see the ripples spreading through it. He's acting, Kong said calmly. Felicia leaned forward, already opening her laptop. She didn't need to ask how he knew. Darnell had been building toward this moment for years. Men like him didn't retreat when cornered. They lunged. The leak hit quietly at first. A single document dropped into the wrong inbox. Then a second. Screenshots cropped just enough to look damning. Financial data stripped of context. Names missing where they mattered. Felicia's digital footprint positioned carefully in the margins. He's framing me, she said. Yes, Kong replied. Partially. The story spread the way bad information always did. Fast and sloppy. Fed by people who wanted to believe it. An ambitious analyst. A woman who had accessed something she shouldn't have. A convenient villain with no power to defend herself. Felicia felt the familiar pressure in her chest. Not panic. Focus. You could stop this, she said. Right now. Kong nodded once. I could. But you won't. No. She looked up at him. Why? Because stopping it gives him control over the tempo, Kong said. And tempo decides who survives. He didn't block the leak. He let it spread. For 6 hours, Felicia watched her name circulate in spaces she had never been invited into. Comment sections, internal emails, quiet conversations she could feel but not hear. Every instinct told her to act, to defend herself, to correct the record. Kong stopped her with a raised hand. Not yet. By the 12th hour, the story had momentum. By the 18th, it had taken a shape Darnell could no longer control. People started asking questions. Not about Felicia, but about the missing pieces. Then Kong moved. He didn't leak anything anonymously. He didn't dump files onto the internet or hide behind proxies. He released the rest through channels designed to withstand scrutiny. Names, dates, transactions, entire structures laid bare, not as accusation, but as documentation. Felicia watched as the narrative collapsed under its own weight. The same outlets that had hinted at her guilt pivoted abruptly. Corrections appeared, clarifications, then silence. By the time authorities moved, Darnell was already isolated. His allies vanished first. Not dramatically, quietly. Calls unanswered. Meetings postponed indefinitely. Funding rerouted. Influence withdrawn with surgical precision. Then the subpoenas arrived. Felicia sat back in her chair, exhausted, staring at the screen. "You sacrificed influence," she said quietly. "Yes," Kong replied. She turned to him. "To protect me?" "To protect the structure," he said. "You became part of it when you chose to stay." That landed harder than she expected. "And now?" she asked. Kong turned from the window. "No tensión. No threat. No expectación. Now you leave," he said. "Or you don't." She blinked. "That's it. That's the only ending that matters." He stepped away from the table, creating distance instead of closing it. No guard appeared. No doors locked. No pressure applied. Felicia picked up her bag, walked to the door, stopped. The city hummed behind the glass. Endless motion. Endless options. "You're alone," she said without turning. "Yes. You didn't have to be." Kang's voice was steady. "Power taken always demands payment. Power refused changes the cost." She turned back to him, then really looked at him. A man surrounded by systems, choosing restraint over dominance. A man who could control outcomes, but refused to control people. She thought about the life waiting for her outside. Safer, smaller, cleaner. A life where she would always be reacting instead of deciding. "I'm not staying because I need protection," she said. "I wouldn't accept that," Kong replied. "I'm staying," Felicia said, "because I chose the fight." For the first time since she had met him, Kong hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Then he nodded once. "No esmail. No persistion. No promise." He stepped aside, leaving the path open in both directions. Felicia walked past him, not away, not towards safety, but into something harder to define. Choice. And that was the point.